Hello, my name is Serena Richardson, and I am an RSTP trainer located in Southern Ontario. I will be hosting this information session for you today, which will run for approximately 1 hour. And we will be recording this session so that a link to the recording, as well as a copy of the slides and speaking notes, can be made available to you in a follow-up email. We also want to let you know that this webinar will provide you with a general overview of the upcoming new process for submitting private sponsorship applications online. We will not be discussing how to fill out the forms online in this session. There will be, however, a subsequent webinar which you will want to register for that will provide an actual walkthrough demonstration for using the portal and how applications are to be submitted once the new permanent resident portal launches for private sponsorship applications. All participants in this session will be sent a follow-up email with the link to register for the webinar, which will be scheduled for a later date following the launch of the portal. Since we are meeting today on a virtual platform, I would like to begin by acknowledging that each of us here today are located in various places across this nation we call Canada, and we are each residing in the traditional territory of many First Nations peoples. I would like to specifically acknowledge that Toronto, the location of the RSTP main office, is situated on the lands of many First Nations peoples, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt and Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We invite you to personally dedicate time to learn about, reflect on, and acknowledge the history and land of the First Nations peoples where you reside, and to personally consider how we can each, in our own way, move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Here's what we will cover today in this webinar. We will begin by providing you with a bit of information about the Refugee Sponsorship Training Program, followed by the historical context for why Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada is moving towards online submissions for private sponsorship applications. After that, we will discuss the new process for online application submissions, and we will also cover some of the frequently asked questions that you may have. And there will also be time at the end for asking questions. With that in mind, if you have a question during the presentation, please type it into the question box, and we will answer them in sequence at the end. So the Refugee Sponsorship Training Program is a national program. However, we do not provide training for the province of Quebec, which has its own immigration system and a different refugee sponsorship program. We are a program designed to support groups of 5 and community sponsors and sponsorship agreement holder organizations in Canada, commonly known by the acronym SAWS, their constituent groups, and co-sponsors. We are funded by IRCC, and RSTP trainers are employed by Catholic Cross-Cultural Services. We have trainers located across Canada, such as British Columbia. We have trainers in Vancouver, Alberta, Calgary, and Edmonton, Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, Manitoba, Winnipeg. In the Atlantic provinces, we have trainers in Fredericton and Halifax. And in Ontario, there are several trainers located in the Greater Toronto Area, Southern Ontario, and Ottawa. You can visit our website to find a trainer near you. So what do we do? Well, the RSTP provides information, training, and resources for all aspects of private sponsorship to sponsors and the general public who are interested in the private sponsorship of refugees. We do this by providing in-person workshops and virtually through webinars using Zoom and GoToMeeting. We also have a monthly webinar series that we offer for groups of 5 and community sponsors. And periodically, we will offer webinars on a variety of topics related to the Private Sponsorship of Refugees program. We also provide online e-training courses. Sponsors begin with the introductory course on the Private Sponsorship of Refugees program, followed by an advanced level course, which takes a deeper dive into assessment of refugees for eligibility and admissibility, and assessment of sponsors for financial and settlement capacity. We also have a course specifically designed for settlement professionals, and we also offer the mandatory training courses for SAWs. We've also developed tools and resources for sponsors to assist them, such as the Minimum Financial Support Calculator, which is available on our website. On an annual basis, the RSTP organizes and hosts the SAW conference in collaboration with IRCC, SAW Council, and the SAW Navigation Unit. For IRCC updates, we communicate directly to subscribed sponsors through our email distribution list and providing bi-weekly communications through the RSTP Bulletin and the Blended Visa Office referred newsletter. We also have a variety of online resources on our website, such as fact sheets, a best practices manual, a minimum financial support calculator, and several training session videos. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. RSTP trainers also respond to many emails and phone calls for inquiries about the PSR program. You can get instant answers to your sponsorship questions by calling our 1-800 helpline. Local RSTP trainers also provide support by reviewing groups of 5 or community sponsor applications before sponsors submit them to IRCC to ensure that it is complete and filled in correctly. Sponsors can also receive support for the Blended Visa Office Referred program from start to finish. And the PSR SPO Connections project provides the matching of sponsors to settlement providing organizations. And they also provide specific training for settlement providing organization professionals who want to specialize in supporting privately sponsored refugees. Now let's take a look at the online PSR application submission portal. IRCC is expanding the current permanent resident digital intake portal to include private sponsorship of refugees applications. The anticipated launch date is fall of 2023, and the earliest anticipated date is near the end of October. There will be a grace period during the transition for submitting applications by email to using the online submission portal only. The grace period will be until the 31st of December 2023. All sponsorship group types and referral partners will use this online submission portal. Applicants will access the portal from this link. Keep in mind, however, that the PSR submission option is not yet active. Before we dive into the information about the new online portal, I want to provide some historical context for application submissions. Prior to 2016, PSR applications were mailed to IRCC. Mailed applications took a significant amount of time for sponsors because they would need to send the hard copy forms to the refugees overseas for signing and wait for them to come back again, along with supporting documents, and they would also need to coordinate to have each of the sponsors sign the forms in person with a pen before sending the completed application package on to IRCC. Some sponsors would send an application by courier to IRCC, which was a way to speed up delivery and track the application's arrival. However, it was also quite costly. I seem to recall that using Perolator ground service in 2015 within Ontario would cost about $30 per application from Toronto to Ottawa. Once the applications arrived at IRCC, they had to be manually entered by data entry clerks into IRCC's database called the Global Case Management System, also known as GCMS. So on IRCC's end, the number of clerks available and how quickly they could enter the data would determine how fast applications were processed. Once the sponsor's portion of the application was approved, the refugee documents were then mailed to the overseas migration offices for processing. In 2016, however, a new process was implemented where applications could be submitted by email. Emailed applications quickly became the preferred method because digital versions of the applications could be processed faster. Sponsors could send the forms and documents by email to the refugees abroad, and only the signature pages needed to be printed, signed, scanned, and emailed back to their sponsors, who would then email the whole application as PDF attachments to Rocco. Also, the introduction of 3D barcodes for the IMM 008 generic application form meant that the amount of manual data entry at Rocco was also reduced. Applications sent by mail post were still accepted. However, it was still going to be a slower process. Even if sponsors managed to send applications to the refugees by email, in some cases, the refugees may still have had to mail the package back to them, especially where internet access was limited and costly. For IRCC, mailed applications were not the preferred method of intake. This is because it adds a processing step of having to digitize the hard copy forms and documents, meaning IRCC would have to manually scan each and every page into PDF files. Of course, introducing 3D barcodes eliminated the data entry of the IMM 0008 forms. However, each of the Schedule A and Schedule 2 forms, as well as all of the sponsors' forms, would still need to be manually entered into GCMS by IRCC. Now, beginning in the fall, possibly around the end of October, PSR applications will be submitted online via IRCC's Permanent Resident Digital Intake Portal. The benefit of using the portal is that the application forms can be accessed, edited, and submitted directly online, and supporting documents will be uploaded directly to the portal. This digital intake method will also provide a stronger protection measure for the privacy of information being provided, and files will be created in the IRCC system much more efficiently so that PSR applications can be actioned sooner. Any sponsorship group type will be able to access the portal, whether they are a group of 5, community sponsor, sponsorship agreement holder, and their constituent groups, or co-sponsors. IRCC referral partners, as well as immigration representatives, will also have access to this portal. Whichever group type you belong to, you will first need to create a user account. Within the sponsorship group, a primary sponsor needs to be decided upon. In a moment, we will discuss in detail how to decide who the primary sponsor should be. But for now, what you need to know is that this will be the person who will initiate the application. The key things to keep in mind when deciding who will be the primary sponsor is that they have specific responsibilities, such as they will be the only one who can invite or delete group members and submit the completed application to IRCC. Once the application has been initiated, the primary sponsor will add the names and emails to the application for each of the other members of the sponsorship group. They can also invite the refugee principal applicant, although that is completely optional, depending on whether or not they have access to reliable internet. We will talk more about that in the next few slides. An automated email invitation will be sent to each person who has been invited. So for example, in the case of a sponsorship agreement holder, it would make sense to have the SAW representative as the primary sponsor who initiates the application. And they would then add the co-sponsor or constituent group signatories to the application. Now let's take a closer look at how to decide who the primary sponsor should be. For a group of 5, any one of the group members can be the primary sponsor. So whoever initiates the application first will have that responsibility. For a community sponsorship group, it would be a best practice to have a designated email address and a digital platform user account set up for initiating all of your applications. The same recommendation goes for referral partner organizations.
However, they should use the same email address that was provided to IRCC for their primary contact.
For sponsorship agreement holders, you must create a digital portal user account that is associated with the same primary email address that is on file for your SAW at IRCC. Some organizations have created a shared email account for their primary email address because processing applications might be done by more than one person. So for example, if my organization was called Lifeboat and we had a shared email address called sponsors@lifeboat.org, that would need to be the same email address we use when creating the digital platform account login for the primary sponsor. And that would also need to be the same email address we provided to IRCC for our SAW's primary contact. Immigration representatives, such as lawyers or consultants, may also initiate applications on behalf of their clients who are the sponsors. However, if sponsors want ultimate control of the application submission, then they should determine to be the primary sponsor and then simply invite their immigration representative to assist with completing the application. Now let's take a look at what a primary sponsor's responsibilities would be. They would be responsible for initiating an application. And also they have the option to invite the principal applicant as well. They are responsible for inviting or deleting group members to the online portal. They're also responsible for reviewing the forms for correctness and verifying any uploaded documentation. And as I mentioned, they are responsible for submitting the application. They can see the status of all portal applications that have been submitted, that are in progress, or have been returned. They will be able to view, edit, and delete any unsubmitted portal applications. They'll also have the ability to resend forgotten passwords to any of the invited group members. And they have the sole ability to download the submitted application package as a zip file. And with that capability, you need to understand that it is actually possible for them to view all of the other group members' ID and financial documents. Now let's see who the primary sponsor will be inviting to the application. When it comes to groups of 5, the primary sponsor would of course invite each of the other group of 5 members. Sponsorship agreement holder representatives could invite constituent group reps or other members such as staff or volunteers assisting with completing the forms. The SAW or community sponsorship group could invite any co-sponsors to the application. And if your sponsorship group has an immigration representative, they can be added as well. Now let's take a look at what invited group members can and cannot do. Invited group members can create a user account. They can also see a listing of applications that they have been invited to. They can view and edit the refugee forms for applications they've been invited to. They can upload personal ID and financial documents. And they can upload sponsors' forms and supporting documents. They cannot, however, invite or delete any group members. They cannot submit or delete applications. They cannot view or edit applications that they have not been invited to. And they cannot access other group members' uploaded personal documents, such as the ID documents or financial profile information. Once the group members have been invited, each of them will need to log into the portal from the unique link provided to them in the email they have received. After they have logged in, each of the sponsors and the refugee, if they've been invited, will be able to access and edit the refugee's online forms via the portal. What this means is that sponsors can assist refugee applicants with the completion of their forms. Initially, for the launch of the online portal, the sponsor's forms and the refugee Schedule 2 form will still be completed offline as PDF forms and then uploaded into the portal. Hopefully, at some point in the future, these forms will also be included as a direct input form online through the portal. The invited refugees can upload their own Schedule 2 plus supporting documentation and will be required to electronically sign a declaration once their online application has been completed prior to submission. If, however, the refugee cannot access the portal for various reasons, such as not having a stable internet connection, not knowing how to use a computer, or perhaps they simply do not have the language skills to complete the forms, in this case, their sponsors or legal representative can assist by completing the forms online for them and opt to have the final declaration page printed so that the refugee applicant can sign it by hand. The sponsor will then need to scan and upload it into the portal along with the refugee's supporting documentation. As mentioned earlier, the primary sponsor who initiated the application has the responsibility to review the application to ensure everything has been filled out properly, that all parties to the sponsorship have signed their declarations, and that no supporting documents are missing. And if everything is ready to go, the primary sponsor is the only one who has the ability to submit it to IRCC. After submission, sponsors cannot edit the application, but IRCC will be reviewing the application for completeness, meaning they will be checking to see if there is anything missing, such as whether or not any supporting documents were not included. Please be aware that at this stage, IRCC will not be deciding whether or not a refugee status determination document is valid or not. That happens at a later stage after the application is deemed to be complete and ready for processing. When it comes to referral partners and sponsorship agreement holders, IRCC staff will continue to verify the names and email addresses match what they have on file as the primary contact for that organization in order to prevent unauthorized application submissions via the portal. If the application is found to be incomplete, the sponsors will be notified by email that they must log into the portal again to rectify the issue. At this point, the application editing function will become available so the sponsors can make the necessary changes. As mentioned earlier, the primary sponsor who initiated the application is the only one who has the ability to resubmit the application to IRCC. Once the application is deemed to be complete, IRCC will need to manually input the sponsor's PDF form data and Schedule 2 into GCMS. However, the refugee's form data is automatically connected to GCMS via the portal. With the file creation in GCMS, a G number will be issued. It is at this point that the processing time will begin, and the date timestamp for the first in, first out queue for processing is assigned. IRCC will communicate with the sponsors by email, which is external to the portal, meaning there will not be a function for messaging IRCC via the portal for any communications related to the application. As was mentioned previously, once an application has been submitted, sponsors will not have access to edit the application via the online portal. Sponsors will also not be able to add a dependent to the application using the online portal after the application has been submitted. Instead, the sponsors will need to notify IRCC externally by email when a dependent needs to be added, and to follow the instructions provided in the respective guide to private sponsorship. Sponsors will, however, be able to see a list of all of their applications that they have access to and which ones have been submitted. So there are a few questions that may have come to mind for you regarding this new online portal submission method. And you may be wondering, how do I access the portal? What equipment do I need? Any computer, tablet, or mobile device can be used. You just need an internet connection and a web browser such as Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Mozilla Firefox, or Apple Safari. This is the web address for the digital portal, but please keep in mind that access to submit applications online will not be possible until this function of the portal becomes active. And you may be wondering how sponsors will submit applications if they don't have the technical knowledge or skills to even be able to use computers. IRCC recognizes that the digital portal may present an accessibility barrier for some clients, so applications submitted by mail will still be accepted. Keep in mind, however, that mailed applications will take longer because they still need to be digitized. You may be wondering how sponsors can get information or help on how to use the portal. Each of the current guides to private sponsorship will be updated to include instructions for submitting applications online. And you can also request help through the IRCC web form. RSTP will be offering additional training webinars once the portal has launched, where we will walk through the digital portal so you can learn how to submit an application package using the portal. The RSTP will also be posting demo videos on YouTube, which will address frequently asked questions about using the portal, such as how to create a user account, how to log in, etc. There will also be a list of frequently asked questions posted on the RSTP website. If we did not get to your questions today, feel free to contact our helpline or your local RSTP trainer by email.